Welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills and today's segment of ShirleyLouFinance.com. I am Tia Young with Shirley Lou sitting right next to me, and we are your hosts. Today we are going to talk about the uncertainty of life, what it means to have resolve, to fight back, and to never give up. Our special guest will be 31 years old in November of this year. He got out of the Navy in 2009 and began working and going to school. In August 2014, at 27 years old, he suffered a stroke and had to fight for his life. Today, he has finished his MBA and is a financial services professional. He has a testimony of thanksgiving, courage, and resolve. We also have a surprise guest who will join us after the break. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Michael DeVinney to our show. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Shirley, my
Thank
sidekick, my favorite sidekick.
You know, it's my favorite whenever I come with you.
Well, that's great. Well, I have tons of questions, so we're going to get started. Michael, if it's not too painful for you, would you go over what happened to you in 2014 from that first motion of dizziness?
Certainly. It actually started in the morning when I went to get coffee, and I started to feel a little dizzy. And shortly after I got back to my desk, it got worse, and I felt extremely dizzy, didn't feel well. I actually thought about going home, but then I started vomiting and asked the lady behind me if there's a doctor in the building. And they called the doctor. They came and got me a wheelchair. I was embarrassed because at the time I didn't think anything was wrong with me. I thought it was my blood sugar.
Yeah.
They gave me an IV, I'd be fine. But I went to the hospital. They did a few more tests, and the doctor told me I had to stay overnight so they could do more tests. So right then and there, I knew it wasn't my blood sugar, it was something else. And while they're doing some more tests, I felt a tremendous pressure on my skull. It honestly felt like it would explode. And I was medicated, and I woke up maybe a day or two later, and my head was all wrapped up, and I had tubes coming out of the back of my head. So what they did while I was out was remove a piece of my skull to relieve the pressure of the fluid buildup on my brain. It's called a craniotomy.
Well, what type of stroke did you have?
It's called a ischemic stroke or ischemic stroke.
Right.
It's usually a blockage that prevents blood to the brain, but in my case, I had a ruptured artery and I wasn't getting blood to the brain, and the trauma to my brain caused a fluid to build up, which is hydrocephalus, which is the pressure I felt.
Right. Well, you know, I had a brother who suffered an ischemic stroke as well. And he at the time was 57 years old, and so I know kind of what you were. I know as a caregiver and as a family member what you must have gone through. I know that you never expected in a million years to have a stroke at 27 years of age. What kind of support did you have from family and friends and from the doctors?
Well, I actually had tremendous support from my family and friends. At the time, my roommate was my cousin, so moving out wasn't any sort of legal hassle. And I lived with my parents for about a year. All of my family was great the entire time. And I stayed there until I went back to work.
And what about like the physical therapy and were you in the hospital for months or weeks?
I was in the hospital for a month and a half. I did therapy while I was in the hospital and after I got out. But you don't do therapy until you're 100%. So you do therapy until they're ready to release you. I still do therapy every day. I go to the gym, try to improve my balance, things like that. I've actually tried to learn a new language because one of the difficulties I have is speaking and pronouncing my words fully. And I figured if I learned a new language, that would help with coordination in my mouth, pronouncing all the words. Unsuccessful, but I've tried to learn a new language.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job. You really are. You look great. You're doing a great job. It's unbelievable just to look at you. You would not think that you have suffered in that way. Now, did you have any kind of when you were in high school, did you have any type of problems with medical doctors or anything saying that, Michael, you need to be careful on this or what you eat or whatever because you could be prone to have a stroke later?
No, actually, in high school, I played sports. I played football and baseball. And then after high school, I still worked out constantly, ate very healthy, and I was doing jujitsu and a little bit of boxing and kickboxing. So I always stayed active. And there were no signs of a stroke. It just one day happened. There weren't any signs leading up to it. And now I just play golf.
Right. Well, when you were saying about you were active in high school and doing sports and football and things like that, and I know that nowadays there's been a lot of talk about some of the sports activities being so, so volatile and rough that people are having troubles with strokes and different kind of head injuries.
Well, of course, the sports I played could damage an artery. It didn't happen when I did the sports. The doctors assumed it was sometime very near my stroke. So at the time, I was not playing football or jiu-jitsu. So they actually believe it was from cracking my neck.
Wow, that's really something. Shirley, you have any comments at this point?
Well, for a young man like him, at that time he was fortunate enough, in my opinion, had his family and everyone supported him and all that, and whereas he could stay there with his parents supporting him financially.
Right.
Otherwise, but if most people out there where they do have kids and family and other stuff, and if you couldn't go to work, laying there for a year and a half, with no income coming in, that could be devastating.
Right.
But in this case, he was fortunate. But he still had bills with some of the deductible and co-payment and other stuff that, for the hospital, he still had to live with. But what's amazing is that imagine if he would have some of the product and services that we do today, where when he laid up, he couldn't do any of that stuff.
Right.
The kind of life insurance things that we had would have been a cash flow of income that he could have used while he was sitting there or laying there, couldn't go to work, and being able to support,
Right.
So,
and we're going to bring that up. We're going to talk about that because I think that's very important. When you were in the hospital, it sounds like when you first got there, they didn't immediately diagnose you as a stroke victim, that it took them, overnight or something like that to...
It was I was in the hospital a few hours before they knew exactly what was happening. They had to do a few tests.
Well, while you were in there, did you ever have this feeling that you weren't going to make it, or did you have a strong resolve that you were going to get through this? Or did it occur? Did it even occur?
Actually, I was in the hospital, and I remember I said to the staff that I'll be fine in 2 weeks or so, but they didn't say anything to me, but I could see the looks on their faces that I wouldn't be fine in 2 weeks, and I certainly wasn't fine. And when I left the hospital, and I still have difficulty walking and speaking at this very moment. And it's been 3 years since then. So,
but you are a miracle. You know that, right? It's a miracle.
I'm very happy to be here. So,
but you know what's amazing with him? First of all, the work where he worked, that doctor or that clinic identified and got smart enough to send him to the hospital. That was the smartest move. They were probably the one,
Right.
I mean, otherwise.
Right, and that's kind of rare because he is so young and he looks healthy and everything, and so they could have said, well, let's just let him lie here for a while.
Exactly.
And he'll be okay. And you were saying that too, that you thought you'd be okay.
I am very glad I was at work. Even when I was at work and I was getting dizzy, I looked up my symptoms on WebMD, and they said it was the symptoms of a stroke. There's no way that's correct.
Yeah.
Like it has to be on my blood sugar.
Right.
Give an IV and I'll be fine.
And you'll be fine.
And if I was at home, I just would have gone to bed or something like that.
Right.
Laid down and.
Right. That's true. We had a different story.
Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, that's right. Now, after now this is the part that when you and I were talking earlier, I didn't quite understand. Were you working on your MBA at the time the stroke occurred, or did you start this after you started the healing process?
I was actually working on my MBA, and I had to drop out of class when I had my stroke. It actually felt good to get back to school because I felt like I was getting back to a daily routine. Kind of, it felt good. Felt
Yeah,
good.
it felt good to do that.
Yeah.
Now, how hard was it getting back? And did you have to have extra tutors, or you didn't?
No, I didn't have any mental problems. It was I actually had the biggest problem with typing because at the time I could only type with one hand, so it took a very, very long time to type. And luckily, MBA programs, the papers aren't extremely long,
Right.
so but it still took a very long time to type a single paper.
Right. That's good. That's good. And your therapy, what is some of the types of therapy did you have? I know you had speech. We talked about the speech therapy and physical therapy?
You do speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy mostly.
Okay.
And physical therapy, of course, is just physical movements. Occupational therapy deals with driving cars, making your bed,
okay.
showering, things like that.
Okay, doing the basic living, daily activities of living, right,
yeah.
right, on that end. Well, that's really good. Do you have siblings, brothers, sisters?
I have 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger.
Wow. So you did have a lot of support.
I did have a lot of support, and a lot of friends came to the hospital and supported me. And like I said, I stayed with my parents, and I had people come over. All my family was incredibly supportive.
Right, and your church was very supportive as well. That's good. Well, we are going to take a short station break. We'll be right back, so don't touch that dial.
As a pro snowboarder, I've crashed many times while pushing the limits. However, I didn't know the impact a brain injury can have. The risk got real for me after sustaining a traumatic brain injury while I was training for the 2010 Winter Olympics. You really need to educate yourself about brain injuries and how dangerous they can be. After my injury, the doctors were saying that the helmet saved my life. Wearing a helmet to prevent severe traumatic brain injury is a must, and so is learning what you can do to prevent concussion.
Welcome back. You're watching today's segment of ShirleyLouFinance.com with me, Tia Young, and Shirley Lou, sitting right next to me, my sidekick, your hosts, along with special guest Michael DeVinney and our surprise guest, Shirley Adesalu, owner of Prodigy Accounting Service. Welcome, Shirley, to the set.
Thank you.
And I hope I pronounce your last name again for me, because I think I didn't say that correctly. Your last name, how's that pronounced?
It's Adesalu.
Adesalu, I did.
You did great.
Shirley, how did you meet Sharice? Tell us about that.
Well, it's really funny. One of my clients happens to be a doctor, and as I'm going through her financial planning and all this and that, and she said, I like it a lot, but at the end, she still had to get blessing from someone that she trusts. And Miss Adesalu here, of course, it's one of those CPA firm that does the doctor accounting and taxes and those kind of things. So she called her, I guess, and texted her and said, can you take a look at this thing of what Shirley's offering me and to see if it's any good? Should I make a move? Should I not? And that's how it happened. And we just kind of kick it off, when we talk to each other. And surprisingly, maybe she can share with you a little bit how she heard about me as well.
Yeah, and I was going to ask her to tell us a little bit about her accounting firm, her practice.
Sure.
Prodigy, right?
Prodigy Accounting Services, that's correct. It seems like me and Shirley, because we both have a passion when it comes to finance and when it comes to accounting, and like dealing with our client, she had some questions just about with her investments and about her tax consulting. So based on her trust with Shirley, because she sent me over like this long text message just about investing, her funding in products for insurances and for example, other type of retirement plans. So like based on that, because I was able to speak with Shirley Lou on a Sunday, that's dedication. And she was very direct, but yes, she was very detailed. And based on that, because I was able to tell our client, go for it, because it's a really good product, and then also that it'll have great benefits for you now and also in the future. So stating that for my firm, Prodigy Accounting Services, because like we do a lot of CPA consulting, and we also do financial planning too.
Okay, good. That's good. Well, you know, the thing with Shirley, she's known as an ever-ready bunny.
Okay, I like that.
And you can call her at 3 or 4 in the morning, and she's answering the phone on the second ring. So I don't think she's
thing?
sleeping. I don't think she ever
Wait a minute.
sleeps.
This time it's going to be forwarded to Tia Young, and it's 555.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, you know, I have a question for you because I saw some of your writings, and there was a sentence that just captured me, and I wanted you to explain a little bit to our audience what you meant by that. See, I've got part of it. I want to read and make sure. You know, what do you mean when you say that everyone deserves the keys to a life of transformation that creates a legacy of benefits for all generations? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. Because I think for example, generational wealth is important, and sometimes it's not even based on wealth, but it's just based on, for example, financial freedom. And like based on financial freedom, because you have the freedom like to do things that your family should be doing when it comes to traveling, or you know, maybe for example having a job that you're passionate about and not just having a paycheck. Right. And like based on that, when you make decent and wise choices with your finances, then you're able to be free, and then you're able to explore your, again, passion, and just be happy in life in general. And because I think also when it comes to finances, like a lot of things that we do or that we go through is based on our financial situation.
That's true.
Whether it's poverty, whether it's schooling, whether it's housing. And I think for example, once we teach people about financial well-being, then they'll be able to create a legacy that'll be great for them and their families. Right.
That's very good. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go back now to Michael a little bit. We've been talking to Michael. Michael suffered an ischemic stroke when he was 27 years old. And, you know, he is fully recovered and, you know, working and, you know, it's just great. It's a miracle. But I wanted to ask, and you touched on this a little bit, when you pick up the newspapers, all you're seeing and hearing about on the radio is about the healthcare situation, you know, things that happen when catastrophic life events happen and you have no control over it, people not having enough insurance to take care of a situation like what happened to you. Michael, how did you feel? Did you feel comfortable with the health care that you got and that you were able to cover yourself?
Well, at the time, I did feel like my insurance was decent. It did cover most of my surgery and hospital stay, but also I didn't work for a year and I didn't have an income. That was very, very difficult, and I'm single. I don't have a family or a house to take care of. I still had bills to pay, and then I had a few medical bills to pay on top of that. So it was very, very difficult. Like I said, it was decent, but it could have been a lot better. If I would have known now, or known then what I know now, I would have had totally different insurance.
Right. So Shirley, let me go to you. If you had met Michael before the stroke, how would you have advised him? What kind of products out there could have made things a little easier for him?
Well, you know, typically what people think a lot of time is that they always think life insurance itself is death insurance. Yeah. And nowadays the industry has changed. If I would have met Michael, you know, and he would have ran into this problem where he basically could not feed himself and could not get up, could not move, you know, basically it's long-term care situation. Instead of $1 million life, would have been, he could have accelerated it and used $1 million cash. So to me, you know, having a client, giving them choices, you know, whether you got critical illness, critical injury, or you've got chronic illness. You know, a lot of folks out there today may have the doctors. She's you know, she's a Shirley, what if I have a heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer? Right. Now, Alzheimer, you know, is very close to your situation right now. Right?
That's right.
So imagine at that time, if your parents would have had this policy, now you would have the fund to be able to take care of them, do what you need to do. So it's not just death, but advancement of benefits that you can use while you're alive and not dead. And that's why I'm so passionate in what I do, because these are the things that happen to us. We would get hurt, get sick way before we could kick the buckets, I believe. And again, what if nothing happens to me? Fine. Then the new kind of life insurance nowadays, where you can have a stream of income as an income stream to live for the rest of your life, tax advantage, tax free. And most people out there don't even think about this. If I tell you this, you'd probably be shocked. I mean, I teach people very, very simple how to save $5 a day. You know, to have a life insurance, to leave a legacy. You mentioned earlier legacy. I love what you do by the way. And leaving a legacy, every one of us has an opportunity today to change our family destiny. You could be in a poverty, but a life insurance, if I die tomorrow, my family's become millionaire. Don't most people out there would want to hear about that? And you know, how do you change legacy by generation to generation? And most time people don't, and you know, they don't have any kind of life insurance, and when they die, the family's running around trying to find something to bury them. And for other folks that have a 401k and other stuff, well, I'll leave that for my family. No, you're not. You're using that money when you're alive, and you're liquidating everything you have.
Well, in the case of Michael was only 27 years old. Wouldn't something like that cost tons of money for him to have that? Because you know, how would he access that money?
Well, for him at that age, at 24, it's going to be very expensive. It's probably about $3 a day.
Wow. Is that a joke, Shirley?
No,
is that for real?
It's real. I'm on national television. I can't lie.
So for $3 a day, he could have had a policy. And so when he had the stroke, what would he have had to do to access that money?
All he has to do is pick up the phone, and if the doctor declare that, hey, this Michael cannot, for the next year or so, you know, he's basically pretty much can't move around, can't do any of that, you know, and so they look at his policy, depends how much life insurance he has, and they could accelerate it, that policy.
So is that without depleting?
Some of my policy, the maximum they'll pay out is maximum like $2 million. So,
wow.
Yeah, so he could have, you know, $2 million is pretty good.
Yeah, so they don't deplete the whole policy.
Exactly, and then what he could do, he could accelerate part of it. He could say, you know what, I only need $50,000 or to live for the year because I just need some basic stuff. But it's kind of nice, cool that it's a choice a client has. You know, those kind of things. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. The other question I had, Michael, you are now a financial services professional. How do you plan to use your testimony with your clients, and especially the younger generation? I have a 22-year-old nephew, and when I sit down and try to talk to him about things like life insurance and health insurance, he's like, "Oh, I'm getting ready to go to a concert. I'll talk to you later about that." I mean, it's very hard to because they're so young, and it just seems like life is forever. It's very hard to talk to the younger crowd. I'm speaking of the 25 to maybe 35, maybe even 40.
I agree. The younger I feel like it's more difficult to think long term, but it's very important. I would urge everybody out there to think long term, whether you're 25, 35, 45, prepare for the uncertain, because it doesn't have to be a stroke. It could be anything that can happen. It's about being prepared. As Shirley mentioned earlier, if nothing happens, that's great. You're still prepared for retirement. And the life insurance is not just death insurance. It's a retirement plan, and an incredible retirement plan. Right. And I think everybody should do it. Right.
That's a good answer. And Sharice, I'm going to go back to you as a CPA. You know, are there times that you have to advise your clients about, you know, catastrophic events, and you're looking at all of their paperwork, and you can see that maybe they're not covered? How do you handle that, or do you? Is that going against the privacy laws, or can you make recommendations to them?
Well, I do because, like, for example, financial freedom is based on truth. So like saying that, because I'll look at their can I say bio, or like, for example, look at where they are now and just tell them, well, like based on my knowledge, or like based on my partner, or like some skills that I've heard, or like knowledge that I know, you know, these are the best ways to go when it comes to life insurance, when it comes to investments, when it comes to tax planning. That's how I you know, usually do it. But also just to piggyback, like on a financial planning part, when it comes to young people, Because, like, for example, because I'm working with a nonprofit organization called Moving Youth Towards Hope. And what we're doing is that we are starting in middle school teaching young people about planning with their finances. And like, for example, with the stock market, just to invest or just be knowledgeable of, what you like. Might be Coca-Cola, might be Google, but just to invest in things that you have knowledge of and that you enjoy. And then also the importance of planning.
Yes.
When it comes to life and when it comes to finances.
Right, right.
So,
well, Michael and Sharice, we are just about out of time. I want to thank you guys so much, and you're welcome to come back on Skills to Pay the Bills anytime on Shirley's show. I'm sure it's okay with you, right, Shirley?
Absolutely.
On any time. So thank you very much.
thank
Thank
you.
you for having
Thank
me.
you, Tia.
You're
You did a
welcome.
wonderful job.
You know, challenges often come unannounced and sudden, but we can overcome them by exercising faith in Almighty God, by making a firm stand that we are going to fight back, and by walking with humility and thanksgiving for those who would pray and stand with us. You're watching Skills to Pay the Bills in today's segment of ShirleyLouFinance.com. See you next week for another great segment. Bye-bye.